I was raised in a military family. And when I was growing up, we moved around a lot. 12 times before I turned 18, to be exact. So I know that feeling all too well of coming into a new place and trying to figure out the hidden norms, expectations, and values that most other folks just seem to get. I know that feeling of being in a place, but feeling disconnected and unheard by the people around you. It seems like that feeling of disconnection is all around us today, doesn't it? Whether it's about abortion, vaccines, race, gender, guns, elections, we are experiencing divisions around issues that impact us deeply. And so often those feelings of division often leave us feeling isolation and mistrust, where we want to be acknowledged and valued for what we bring to the table. And that's especially true if we have different experiences or perspectives than most other folks around us. So lucky for me, I now get to work in an organization where that's exactly what we address. My name is Hyten, and I'm a co-executive director at Essential Partners. When people feel disconnected, unheard, or deeply divided, we help give them the means to strengthen relationships, deepen belonging, and renew hope in their communities. To tell you a little bit about what this looks like, I would love to talk for just a little bit about soybean farming in Arkansas. Y'all heard that right? Soybean farming. Now, soybean farmers often live year to year, only paying back the millions of dollars that they borrow at the beginning of the growing season when they sell their crops at the end. So anything that threatens their crops threatens their very livelihood. And farmers can lose everything in a single season. One of the threats that can be most devastating to a soybean farmer, that can wipe out 80% of their harvest, is an infestation of a plant called pigweed. Well, a few years ago, seed manufacturers started selling an herbicide called dicamba. And dicamba killed the soybean, or the pigweed, excuse me. And when paired with the right seeds, dicamba could kill the pigweed without killing the soybean. Magic, right? Well, these seeds took over the market. Something like 94% of all soybeans sold in America today are these seeds. But here's the thing. When dicamba isn't used with the right seeds, it can kill the soybean along with the pigweed. So a neighbor treating their crops for pigweed can accidentally destroy and kill their neighbor's soybean. And things can escalate really quickly. In fact, in October of 2016, a fight over dicamba got violent, and a soybean farmer was murdered. In the aftermath of that tragedy, the Arkansas Agriculture Secretary reached out to Janet Harris at the Winthrop Rockefeller Institute and asked if she could help a task force make some recommendations to the governor about the future of dicamba in Arkansas moving forward. Now, what's special about Janet is that she and her team had just completed a training with Essential Partners, where they gained the skills they needed to help this community in crisis. So with the tools and the skills that they learned from their training and coaching with us, Janet and her team planned and facilitated 2 days of meetings, and they made sure to include viewpoints from all sides of this issue. 18 farmers, seed dealers, product manufacturers, and crop consultants in all. And they didn't just debate the issues and come to a vote. They listened to each other's stories. They built trust and understanding, and they learned from each other. One farmer even talked about losing sleep for days because he sprayed dicamba and then heard reports of damage. All he could think about at first was that he might have caused his neighbors to lose their crops. And then he thought about what would happen to him if he couldn't plant soybean next year because he couldn't use the only thing that killed the pigweed. Folks in that room had complex perspectives just like that farmer. And after 2 days of this kind of conversation, those 18 folks with wildly diverse and complex views came to a consensus on their recommendations. It wasn't easy, but 83% of the participants in that room said that their recommendations represented a fair and thorough examination of the issues. And every single participant said that they were able to fully participate and be heard. Janet told me that what they were able to do with the dicamba debate was less about regulation and more about relationships. And she and her team have been helping folks in Arkansas build relationships and paths forward in the years since on criminal justice reform, racism in high schools, community development, and rural health care. Essential Partners works with over 40 communities every year, like Janet and her team. And folks like Janet are transforming their workplaces, their schools, their classrooms, their communities, and even their cities and towns into spaces where people can have the conversations they need to have to be in real community with each other. But this work isn't just about community, because once you experience this type of work firsthand, it can make a difference in every aspect of your life. I know it has for mine. In April of 2019, my father was publicly accused of sexual assault as he considered taking one of the highest roles in the American military. Here are two things that are important to me as I tell this story for the first time in public. First, I believe my father when he tells me that he didn't do what he's accused of doing, and I believe there's evidence to support that. But here's what is also true. I am a victim of sexual assault that happened on my first ever business trip. And at that time, I didn't think that if I reported it, it would do anything, or that I wouldn't be punished or seen as unprofessional if I did. So I called in sick with food poisoning and never spoke a word of what happened to anyone I worked with. My own experience with sexual assault was not only very real, but invisible to the people in my team and in my office. So even while I believe my dad, I also understand the demand to believe accusers and hold perpetrators accountable. After all, data shows that 98% of accusers are telling the truth about their assault. So I struggled with how to show up for my family and my communities and all that complexity. I struggled with how to support my parents, how to support my mom and my dad, while also reckoning with the flawed systems of sexual assault in our country. And let's be honest, the world today doesn't seem set up for that kind of complexity. To most of the world, I was either supporting my dad at the expense of sexual assault victims, or I was focusing on the broken system so much that it made it seem like I didn't believe my dad. But then I remembered that this time I had the skills and the relationships in place to talk about what was happening around me. This time, I have what I didn't have 10 years ago, so I could talk to the people in my life about what was happening. And perhaps most importantly, I could talk to my parents, and particularly my dad, because we had built a foundation of trust, because I trusted my own ability to have difficult conversations, even in the hardest moments. We were able to talk about what it would mean for him to both advocate for his innocence and work to make the system and the military better for victims of sexual assault. I went from being terrified and isolated to being supported and empowered, which is to say I belonged. And my father was confirmed by the Senate. And he spent 2 years as the vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the second highest role in the American military. And there are now news articles out in the world where my dad credits our conversations in his decision to hire someone in the Joint Chiefs Office for the first time, specifically focused on people and family issues in the military. That role continues today, even after my dad's retirement. And it focuses on addressing issues like mental health, sexual assault, and diversity and inclusion within the military. My dad also started talking openly about going to therapy and encouraging others in the military to do the same. And when I talked to him about whether to share this story in public here today, his first response wasn't just encouragement, but advocacy. He told me in no uncertain terms, we should always be talking about this issue. Conflicts on the issues that matter most to us tend to flatten us, make us one-dimensional. We're either allies of the victims or the accused. We are pro-dicamba or anti-dicamba. But that's not the reality. In reality, there are a whole bunch of norms and a whole bunch of values all at stake. And when we can make space for the unique experiences, needs, and values of people, we can begin to step into the complexity of real relationship. And then we can all begin to build thriving communities, strengthened by difference and connected by trust. That is the heart of our work at Essential Partners. Because even if we get through this conversation about elections or vaccines, the next conversation is just around the bend. These conversations aren't going away. So rather than trying to solve one problem at a time, I want to challenge you to begin to make space for conversations about the topics that matter most to you in your classrooms, in your congregations, in your workplaces, in your communities, so that you're ready when the next big conversation comes. Just like Janet was, and just like I was. You won't be alone.